It's back, everybody. The CRJ from Aerosoft version 2 for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and 2024. So if you're new to the channel, hit like, hit subscribe, share your thoughts down in the comment section below. This is a free update for those of you who already own the CRJ in MSFS 2020 already. And this is a whole new version 2 product that they are bringing out, available from Aerosoft and other third-party retailers like Contrail. It's a huge update, lots of tweaks and changes, and of course the compatibility with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, all important there. And for any of you using the Osprey regional livery, that will also need to be updated too. With the new update, you have a all new higher resolution cabin, and as always, good old GSX integration working quite nicely out of the box with it too. This is one of the included liveries, the Lufthansa CityLine hack, and you can see the general detail in the cabin is quite a bit improved comparable to the previous version. They've also got a newly designed EFB, and you've got a really nice, easy to use checklist selection, a great way of importing your flight plan from SimBrief, and just one click for send to FMS, set payload and fuel to pop it straight into the CDU as well, which is really good. And again, one click there to just view your flight plan. You get your good old performance calculations, and you've got your takeoff performance calculators on the right hand side for takeoff and landing, and with that a calculator for it too. Aircraft page on the EFB is slightly different as well. With that you've got lots of different options for connections, and again on the right hand side those easy to use aircraft states, and you can just toggle them around based on how you want the airplane to load in when you first get on board. Maintenance as we expect, and now Navigraph chart integration as well, which is really cool. Use FMS flight plan, immediately pulls in your data, so we then have origin charts like so, SIDS and stars, and you can pin them accordingly too. For what it's worth, this will now have all of the 4 variants of the CRJ, the 550, the 700, the 900 and the 1000, all included in one package for the CRJ version 2. They've also fully remodeled not only the cabin, but they've revised the flight model for the aircraft and sorted out a couple of new features, expanded customization and some bug fixes. There are a few changes to bear in mind, and some of them actually begin with the start sequence for the aircraft. You will need to press and hold the start button for a few seconds for it to then activate. I have noticed though that the actual lights are still a little bit kind of squared, they're not particularly round or neat, and the decals are fairly blurry and low quality still, so I'd like to have seen a little bit more finesse with those, if I'm being honest. But otherwise, this was one of the first aircraft to be released in MSFS 2020 back in the day, and it's nice to see that they've made some progress finally for a very, very long anticipated, long overdue update for this aeroplane. So the plan is this: we are going to head out of Frankfurt, our current location, and we are going to fly to Munich just to kind of explore what this aeroplane has to offer with a short Lufthansa CityLine hop. And I'll try and remember how to fly the aeroplane, having not flown it in a very long time. Now we're starting the APU. That's definitely very different. So let's get the parking brake off, and we'll see how we get on with engine start. There's the press and hold for a few seconds, and that is your start sequence. And then you'll be able to light your engines. And then as before, you've got to unclick from that locking kind of idle cut-off position and then pop it back out into the idle gate. This is pretty good, so once we start moving and we've got pushed back, all of this greys itself out, so that's then locked. So we don't have any problems. And if you wanted to, you could work through all of this. You start up. Cabin announcements can be toggled on and off in the background. 3 seconds, so press and hold. Monitor engine 2. Typically a really nice quiet aircraft. We can just go ahead and finish all of our after start checks. Don't forget to reconnect your nose wheel steering. And we can turn that APU off as well. So already I've got a fair bit of nice familiarity with this aeroplane. So we're going to taxi out to the active and we'll make our way towards Munich. Let us know what you guys think as you're watching along down in the comments section below. And if you haven't already purchased this, when it does release, then take a little look at the links in the description down below. It will take you to the Contrail website if you've never used Contrail as well, or if you've never used the 10% off code that we've got, then you've got that down in the description for today's video too. This is also the first time having a little look at Aerosoft's Frankfurt in MSFS 2024, and it is really quite exquisite. It is pretty phenomenal. I mean, look at that for visuals. A little bit of wing vibration, but nothing too serious. And I have noticed a little bit of texture flickering on the externals of the aircraft, but that potentially is my frame generation playing up a bit weird. Now with the Navigraph chart integration, you do get your moving map, which is quite cool. A little bit glitchy from my experience, but you've got your ground movement maps that are able to be loaded. You can see the slight glitching that we're getting here. And we can load our departure, ready to go. Right, so lining up, trim, flight controls, everything's been set, and cross-checked. We're just going to use 25 left for today. The little intersection from Mike 7 for the departure. Might just set a quick custom view there because I prefer that slightly kind of zoomed out look. And we're going to just pop it on the brakes. I find the brakes massively sensitive. Actually as well, when I go left on the stick, look at that, there's like a small deflections and then all of a sudden a huge deflection to the left, and I've still got a little bit of space left on my yoke to move. But anyway, we are all ready to go. Going to spool those engines up to about 50%. I'm just going to hold it on the throttles, and we're going to set tow gap, thrust. A little bit of a tailwind and a crosswind today for the departure. Speed's alive, power's set. 80 knots. V1 is 137, rotate just after that. Ooh, very twitchy rudder. That should be my sensitivities. V1 rotates, V2. Massively sensitive. So I need to really change that. Positive rate. Gear up. It's travelling. Immensely sensitive controls, which I will need to really tweak, I think, for this particular aircraft. By the feel of it, just hand flying this on the departure just for a little bit longer. Change speed to 180. In fact, let's keep her going. Max 210. Let's go to 200. And we're just going to engage the autopilot, see how she handles with that bit of a rough capture. It's 5,000. Let's keep it going. Up to our cruise. And a little freeze there. Clean her up, flaps to 0, speed checked, flaps 0. And don't forget there's no auto thrust in this, so you will need to bring power back down to the climb gate, set your speed mode accordingly, and work from there. There's a little bit more proactive management required on the aeroplane. So ignition come off, manual override. I'm really drastically working to remind myself how to fly this aeroplane. We'll keep climbing up to cruise, and then we'll have a little chat about what I think thus far. Yeah, a little bit twitchy on the controls, but they're just some sensitivities that I need to kind of fiddle around with myself with the bespoke CRJ profile, but actually that's quite easy to fix, isn't it? So nothing too bad. Sounds exactly the same from what I can tell. The textures again on the interior of the flight deck are pretty much the same as well, but the cabin looks really very good. And in MSFS 2020 the jet looks superb, doesn't it, with these extra amazing visuals from the newer flight simulator, really kind of making it pop. Couple of little stutters. It may well be that that's a Frankfurt scenery issue, more so than the aircraft, and that's something that I'll monitor throughout the rest of the video. Basically, if I don't mention the stutters again, then it effectively will stop, and therefore it's most likely the scenery rather than the aircraft. This will be getting released for an update, just so you all know, around the 25th and 26th of March 2025. So as I record this, it's probably no longer a preview by the time you watch it. So I'm going to spend a few minutes now just getting set up for the approach into Munich, because it is a short flight. I'll be expecting the ILS approach runway 26 right, and we'll set up for that. I also need to set up that landing elevation up here, something you really need to do in this aeroplane. It's a little bit more hands-on than most of the aeroplanes we are used to, so there's a bit more work to do, but it's all fairly logical and actually really easy to learn and enjoy. And there was a bit of a trick to this last time I flew it from memory. If you set, I think it's around 78 or so %, it depends on your weight and your altitude and things, of course, but you can effectively just set a N1, you can see it's gone into cruise mode there, just let it stabilise. You can see there that small little bit of magenta indicating that we are decelerating. So I'll give it a little bit more power. As long as it's around that speed bug, I'll be happy with it. So we've gone for about 79% N1, and we'll just leave it there. You don't want to chase the throttle position. If you're flying longer flights towards the kind of maximum range of this aircraft, you might need a bit more power initially to maintain a speed in the cruise, but what you then might find is as you're burning fuel throughout the journey, you can then bring that back a little bit. So you'll maybe start with 82% N1, and you'll be able to drop that back to 81, 80%, 79% nearer towards your destination. It's just something to bear in mind. And again, as a reminder, you can push sync that heading bug to make that easy. You can set up all of your fix rings. Selecting whatever it is that you might want to set. And remember, in that radio page, it should auto-tune your nav1 for you if it's got auto down there. Once you've captured that ILS, you might want to then hit that DME hold icon potentially as well, depending on what you might be flying for the approach. Just as a little refresh of the aeroplane. A lot of it feels like it's coming back actually. It's a very enjoyable aeroplane to operate in general. And to be fair, it's very nice to be back in it. Now, if you've never thought about flying the CRJ in the sim, it is one of those aeroplanes for certainly regional hops. It is superb at. It is really fine to fly. It's got a supercritical wing surface, if I remember that correctly as well. So in the climb, you really need to manage that energy efficiently, because if you lose the energy in the climb, you'll find that it won't climb anymore, and you'll then have to descend, get a little bit, get that energy back, and then resume your climb. So it is quite a quirky aeroplane to fly, and it can catch you out a few times if you're not careful, you're not managing it properly. And that is part of the fun of operating an aeroplane like this. When you compare it against the lack of progress with the FSS E-Jets, at least this is a bit more of a complete package. It has that advisory VNAV, it has that custom FMS and all that sort of thing built within it, whereas the E-Jets don't have that still after 4 years of quote early access development unquote. And that is quite unacceptable realistically. So it's nice to see that this is, like I said at the start, a massively long overdue update, but at least it's now finally here for us to enjoy. Because for a period of time, this is one of my favourite aeroplanes in the sim, albeit in those early days. It also allows you to go and explore parts of the world that you may not have otherwise bothered exploring. And you'll see there, it's got a lovely little weather animation. And you can see the position of the radar for the weather radome scanning away in front of the aircraft. And that's controlled down here. So I'm just going to go ahead and prepare for our descent. It will be a continuous descent down to about 5,000 hopefully, if I've got this right. But I'll set 7 initially. We'll go from there. The only thing I've done since departure is tweak the rudder sensitivity, so hopefully will help the nose wheel on the way in after touchdown. But I haven't tweaked the yoke sensitivities just yet. We should see the radios auto-tune to 108.7 fairly soon. You can, of course, also couple that advisory VNAV if you wish, or you could just use vertical speed mode to descend, and that's quite a nice little option as well. A little bit more thought involved in achieving the right altitude at the right time, but otherwise certainly very easy to deal with. So we're going to start descent a little early. Remember, no auto throttle, so we've got to bring that throttle down. We should get our advisory VNAV kick in momentarily. Weather in Munich is pretty poor as well. There's a lot of cumulonimbus around. There's a lot of thunderstorms, heavy thunderstorms and rain reported in the area, with heavy showers and rain as well. So I'm not really sure what to expect. You can certainly see some of the weather systems being built in by the simulator ahead of us. There's that snowflake. It's actually it's a good snowflake, not the other version of a snowflake. We can set our VNAV accordingly. It's telling us there we need about 2,000. So we can set that to try and match it. And the snowflake just there, if you're not familiar with the jet, allows you to work that out against this little ball there, and the advisory 2.0 is our current achieved target. So we're looking pretty good on our VNAV descent profile. Again, just for those of you who might be unfamiliar with this, the nav source selector mode switch is down here. It's that little rotary dial knob. You will need to change that to lock 1 if you're flying an ILS, for example. And you will also need to change your course mode selector switches nearer the time too. So it's going to get very busy fairly quickly. So now the nav1 and nav2 mode selectors have automatically changed. That is good. Going to get those armed, ready to go. Going to go 1087 DME hold. Just doing a lot of work here, just to make sure that we are ahead of the aeroplane. You've got to be a lot further ahead of this than you do, say, an A320, for example. Just something to bear in mind. And if you are that way inclined, just as we work through our descent here, you have also got a heads-up display if you're not familiar with the aeroplane. Be an option up in the overhead, out of the way, where I prefer it. Some of you, I know for sure from previous, really like having that option to use yourself. Okay, so we're going to go lock 1 now, because that is active, and we're going to have just cross-check that 261 is set and correct. Good. So that's now the next little phase complete. So we're going to level off at 5,000, allow that speed to come down. I'm going to set my bug down at T. So I can work through flap deployment in a short while. The aeroplane's now starting to kind of capture all of the ILS data and things, and feeding that into our FMS accordingly. Don't forget to arm those thrust reversers if, like me, you haven't flown this for a long time, because otherwise you'll land, you won't have any thrust reversers. So far, albeit a very short flight from Frankfurt to Munich, a pleasant experience, and nice to be back in the aeroplane that I haven't flown in a very long time as well. It works really nicely in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, especially when you've got these beautiful visuals and that newly updated cabin, revised flight model, which does require you to just refine your sensitivities for your controls a little bit more. But that is, again, something that's a bit subjective, and we will all probably have a slightly different choice in sensitivities for things like aileron feel and elevators and things. So set that up as you wish. So the plan for the approach is this. We're going to use heading mode to roll right, and then establish on that ILS, making use of the autopilot system, just to stress test that a little bit, see how that handles the ILS. We've got everything configured as it should be now, so it should work pretty well. And then nearer towards the ground, I'll hand fly that final approach. Gonna let that speed trickle off a little bit more. About 60% M1 is probably where we want the power. And we will start the turn now. Keep an eye on the speed as well as you turn. See there as it drops down a little bit. Just go extend the flaps as you do that. And conversely as well, add in some power. So you can see here a little bit more work required. Let's go to approach mode now, get that armed and ready. Let's get the speed down to 180, 261. Go for 231. What are we now? Flaps 8, 12 miles. Speed's just over 200, that's okay. Been a while since I've flown this, so I'm going to allow myself to be a little bit sloppier on the speed. There's the Lock 1 capture. So the aeroplane's now established on the ILS. Now at 261 for the course. And there's the glide slope. So winds at the minute 270 at 6, showers of rain, few clouds 29, broken cumulonimbus, temporary thunderstorms and rain. UNH 1017. Let's go gear down early. There they go. And we'll go flaps 20. Let's reset my view a little bit to the one I like. A little bit of a crosswind. It seems to be struggling on this ILS though. I'm going to just let it come in a bit closer and see how we get on, but the course and everything is all set as it should be. But it seems to be in line with the taxiway more than it does the runway, so I'm going to turn it off now and hand fly this last little bit. This is potentially just nav data in the actual sim that's a bit more of a problem than the aeroplane. And we'll just let that drift across a little bit better like that. Actually now hand flying, it does feel quite nice. There we go. Well, that was quite a few degrees off, wasn't it? Very twitchy in pitch actually, so I do need to change. Roll feels good, but it's pitch that's a bit snappy, so I'll just have to change that with my own sensitivities at some point in the future. But otherwise, actually really nice to hand fly as well. We've got full flaps, gear down 3 green, reverses arms, park brakes off. We've already checked CAS, landing elevation, all that's checked as well. So this, folks, by the time you watch the video, is probably already out now. So you'll be able to head to the Aerosoft website for the latest updates, see if it's already released or not. You're looking for CRJ version 2, which brings with it compatibility for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. Touchdown. Air reverses. Green. I've gone for rudder pedal settings, sensitivities of -0.4, and actually that feels quite nice. Remember, there's no auto brake either, so you've got to kind of manually brake. 60 knots, let's clear the reversers. Yeah, really nice to be back in the aeroplane actually, to be fair. In any case, I'm going to get us off the the active runway taxi to our stands at Munich. It's a long old way. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Do check out all the links down in the description below. If you haven't checked out my flight simulator videos, when I went to London Gatwick Airport to fly flight simulator, have a bit of an experience day, if you like, with Infinity Simwings, go check that out as well. Those videos are now available on the channel as well. A really superb experience, and we've got discounts for that as well, for those of you who might live nearby. But in the meantime, as always, thank you very much for flying along and watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care.